Have you ever noticed how a single message can tighten your chest? How one careless word can follow you for days like a shadow you cannot shake? I used to believe my calm depended on people being kind, fair, predictable. It doesn't. Calm is not something the world hands you. It is something you build when you stop letting every reaction pull your strings. The Stoics understood this. Stay with me, and you may discover your peace was never as fragile as you were taught to believe. As we step into this first chapter, imagine a quiet room at night, your phone face down on the table, your chest still tight from something that happened hours ago. Not an explosion, not shouting or slamming doors, just that slow, heavy pressure sitting behind your ribs, whispering the same question again and again. How could they? This is where anger usually lives. Not in fire and fury, but in the silence after disappointment. When someone crosses a line you thought was obvious. When someone lets you down in a way that feels personal, even if they never meant it to be. Now imagine this. Nothing dramatic happened. No betrayal that would make headlines. Just a cancelled plan, a delayed reply, a thank you that never came. And yet something inside you shifts. Your mood darkens. Your breath shortens. The day tilts. We like to believe anger comes from what people do, from rudeness, from disrespect, from carelessness. But if you sit with it long enough, you begin to see something uncomfortable. The sting rarely comes from the act itself. It comes from the invisible rule you were holding in your mind, the expectation you never spoke out loud, the contract the other person never signed. This is where Stoic wisdom begins to cut through illusion. Marcus Aurelius wrote that it is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. That line sounds simple until you watch it unfold in real time. You expected someone to be more thoughtful, more loyal, more grateful. You expected them to behave according to your sense of how things should go. And when reality failed to follow your script, your mind rebelled. This is not how it's supposed to be. But pause here. Who decided how it was supposed to be? When did the world agree to follow your inner rules? From here, the shift becomes clear. Anger is not an enemy attacking you from the outside. It is a signal rising from within. A flare revealing where expectation and reality collided. Seneca warned that anger, when left unchecked, harms the vessel more than the target. Not because anger is evil, but because it blinds. It pulls you out of the present moment and drags you into a story about fairness, entitlement, and imagined agreements. The Stoics never asked you to deny anger. They asked you to examine it closely, honestly, without drama. Think of a simple, familiar scene. A friend cancels on you again. You feel heat rising. Your jaw tightens. You tell yourself you are angry because they cancelled, but sit with it a moment longer. The cancellation is only the spark. The fuel is older. Somewhere inside lives a belief that says people who care show up. They follow through. They don't flake. That belief may have been shaped by earlier disappointments, by moments when you felt overlooked or unimportant. The anger you feel now is not about tonight's plan. It is about an old bruise being pressed again. Here is where Stoicism feels less like philosophy and more like a quiet discipline of courage. Epictetus taught that when something disturbs you, look not outward, but inward, and ask what judgment you are protecting. This question changes everything. Instead of reacting, you investigate. What was I hoping for that did not happen? What belief was just challenged? The moment you ask this, the intensity begins to soften. Not because the situation changed, but because you stepped out of the story and into awareness. There is strength here, real strength, not the kind that dominates or proves a point, but the kind that remains steady. Aristotle spoke of this balance when he said that anyone can become angry, but to be angry in the right way, at the right time, for the right reason, that is rare. The Stoics would go even further. They would say that most anger is misplaced, not because the world is innocent, but because we misjudge where our power lies. We give our peace to expectations we never question, then act surprised when they are broken. Picture the alternative. The moment frustration rises, you do not clench your teeth or reach for your phone. You pause, just long enough to breathe, long enough to see the shape of the expectation underneath the emotion. You ask yourself one quiet question. What did I expect here, and why was I so attached to it? This is not weakness. This is mastery. Again and again, this single pause dissolves what hours of arguing never could. Not always completely, but enough to restore clarity. Anger, seen this way, becomes a guide rather than a tyrant. It points, it reveals, it exposes where we are still negotiating with reality instead of accepting it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that people act according to their own understanding, not ours. When you remember this, resentment loosens its grip. You stop demanding that others behave in ways that protect your inner comfort. You begin protecting it yourself. This does not make you passive, it makes you precise. You respond instead of react. You speak when it matters and remain silent when it doesn't. You stop treating every disappointment as a personal attack and start seeing it as information. The moment you do this, something subtle shifts. You are no longer being dragged by emotion. You are learning from it. And here is the quiet truth most people never realize. The calmer you become, the clearer your boundaries grow. The less reactive you are, the less power others have over your inner state. Anger loses its grip, not because you suppress it, but because you understand it. You read it correctly, like a compass, not a command. This is where the first chapter closes, not with control over others, but with awareness of yourself. Because once you see where anger truly comes from, you can no longer be ruled by it. And from this understanding, a deeper kind of calm begins to take root, one that does not depend on people behaving the way you wish they would, but on you seeing reality as it is. And that is where the next lesson quietly begins. Moving into the next chapter, imagine the moment just after your pulse spikes, when a sharp word is sitting on your tongue and your body leans forward as if it has already decided what comes next. The room feels tighter, time feels faster. This is the edge where most people step off without realizing it. Now imagine something different. Imagine choosing not to speak. Not because you are afraid, not because you have nothing to say, but because you can feel the weight of what words can do when they are released too quickly. Here is where our instincts often betray us. We live in a world that praises volume. The loudest voice wins the room. The fastest reply gets the attention. The sharp comeback earns applause. Silence, we are told, is weakness. Hesitation is defeat. If you do not respond immediately, you are letting someone take advantage of you. But lived experience tells a different story. Most of the regrets we carry are not about moments when we paused. They are about moments when we spoke too soon, a sentence fired off without thought, a message sent while the chest was still burning, a remark that felt justified for 10 seconds and expensive for 10 years. From here, Stoic wisdom steps in quietly, without spectacle. Seneca observed that anger, when unrestrained, wounds the one who carries it more deeply than the one who provoked it. Not because the other person is harmless, but because impulse blinds judgment. When we react instantly, we are not choosing. We are being moved, pulled by habit, driven by pride, dragged by the need to defend an image of ourselves that feels under threat. Silence, in this light, is not absence. It is restraint. It is power that knows when not to strike. Picture a familiar scene. Someone challenges you publicly. A subtle insult. A dismissive tone. The kind of disrespect that begs for correction. Your mind races ahead, already crafting the perfect response. And yet, if you pause, something unexpected happens. The fog clears. You notice details you would have missed, the insecurity behind their words, the confusion in the room, the difference between your values and your ego. In that pause, you separate who you are from what was said. You give yourself room to respond with intention rather than reflex. This is what the Stoics meant by mastery. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you always have the option of having no opinion. That line sounds passive until you live it. Choosing not to engage is not surrender. It is discernment. It is deciding that not every provocation deserves your energy. Not every comment earns your voice. When you stop fighting every small battle, you conserve strength for the ones that matter. Silence becomes a filter. Noise passes through. You remain steady. Think about how rarely silence truly harms you. How often has restraint haunted you at night? Almost never. But words spoken in heat have a long memory. They replay themselves. They echo. They build walls where none were needed. Plato warned that wisdom speaks when it has something necessary to offer, not because it cannot bear the discomfort of quiet. That distinction changes how you move through conflict. You stop chasing the last word. You stop confusing expression with strength. There is a moment, subtle but decisive, when someone tries to pull you into their chaos. They provoke, they test, they throw shade. Your old instinct says, fight back, prove yourself, correct them. But when you resist that urge and stay silent, something shifts in the balance. You are no longer inside their storm. You are watching it. And storms lose power when no one feeds them. Often the other person continues talking, digging deeper, revealing more than you ever could by interrupting them. Silence gives truth room to surface. This does not mean suppressing emotion. The Stoics were not stone. They felt deeply, but they chose timing. They chose measure. Epictetus reminded his students that it is not what happens to us that determines our state, but how we respond to it. Response requires space. Reaction consumes it. In the gap between stimulus and response, your character shows itself. That gap may only be a few seconds, but within it lives freedom. Consider how different your life becomes when you no longer feel obligated to answer every slight. Conversations slow, arguments soften or dissolve entirely. People sense your composure. Some feel unsettled by it. Others adjust. Silence has weight. It signals that you are not easily moved, that you are listening more than reacting, that you value your inner order more than winning a moment. This is not something you announce. It is something people feel. There is also an inner consequence, quieter but more profound. When you choose silence wisely, you begin to hear yourself more clearly. You notice what truly matters. You recognize when irritation is pointing inward rather than outward. A pause of a few breaths is often enough to reveal whether a response is needed or whether the urge to speak is just the ego demanding relief. Over time, this practice changes you. You stop being dragged by emotion. you start guiding it. At this stage, calm is no longer fragile. It does not shatter because someone raised their voice or questioned your worth. It rests on understanding, on the knowledge that your peace does not need defending in every encounter. You become selective, intentional, strong in a way that does not announce itself. The world may still test you. It always will, but fewer things get inside. So the next time you feel the fire rising, do not rush to extinguish it with words. Pause. Breathe. Let the moment unfold without your immediate interference. Let silence do its work. Your task is not to correct every offense or win every exchange. Your task is to protect what is rare, your clarity, your steadiness, your peace. And when you learn to do that, you discover a truth the Stoics lived by. Silence is not weakness, it is wisdom in motion. And from that stillness, a deeper strength begins to form, preparing you for what comes next. Entering this next stage, imagine the moment when you catch yourself clenching your jaw over something small, something almost laughable, and you suddenly realize how much energy you were about to hand over to it. Not because the problem was big, but because you were treating it like it deserved your full emotional attention. This is where something subtle and almost strange begins to happen. You stop taking life so seriously. Not in a careless, reckless way, not in a way that avoids responsibility, but in a grounded way that quietly says, "This does not get to steal my peace." Now imagine how often life tests you with tiny interruptions. A rude driver cutting you off when you are already late. A passive comment at work that feels unnecessary. A plan falling apart for the third time in the same week. Nothing catastrophic, nothing life-ending. And yet, notice how easily these moments can hijack your mood. We act surprised every time, as if the world was supposed to cooperate today. As if reality had promised to be smooth, the Stoics saw through this illusion long ago. They understood that much of our suffering comes not from events themselves, but from our insistence that events should be different than they are. Marcus Aurelius wrote that when we are distressed by something external, the pain does not come from the thing itself, but from our judgment of it. That idea sounds calm on paper. It becomes revolutionary in practice. Because once you see this, you begin to notice how often your mind exaggerates, how it inflates small disruptions into personal insults, how it turns inconvenience into injustice. And here is where an unexpected ally appears. Lightness, even laughter. This is where many people misunderstand the Stoic path. They think calm means seriousness. That discipline must be heavy. That wisdom wears a stern face. But laughter, when used rightly, is not weakness. It is resistance. It is the quiet refusal to let pettiness shape your inner world. When you laugh, you are not denying reality. You are shrinking it back to its proper size. You are reminding yourself that this moment is not everything. Picture it clearly. Someone cuts you off in traffic. You feel the surge. The urge to honk, to curse, to replay the scene in your head for the next hour. That path is familiar. It leaves you tense long after the other car is gone. Or you can exhale, a small smile, almost to yourself. There it is again, chaos doing what chaos does. Same event, completely different outcome. One response tightens you, the other keeps you human. The Stoics understood this balance. Aristotle observed that laughter is something uniquely human, not as a distraction, but as a sign of perspective, a way of stepping back just far enough to see clearly. When you laugh at a situation, even briefly, you reclaim distance. You break the spell of urgency. You remember that not every moment deserves the full weight of your outrage. There is wisdom in expecting imperfection. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. When you demand that life behave, you create friction with the very nature of existence. Plans change, people misstep, words come out wrong. When you accept this as part of the terrain, you stop being shocked by it. And when you stop being shocked, you stop being controlled. Think of how often frustration dissolves the moment you step back 5 feet. What felt heavy suddenly looks almost absurd. Not because your standards vanished, but because your perspective widened. Plato spoke of how comedy and tragedy are woven from the same thread. One moment you are tense, a small shift, and the tension loosens into something lighter. Life has not changed. You have. This is not about mocking problems or avoiding responsibility. It is about choosing proportion, about deciding which moments deserve your full attention and which do not. Not everything is a crisis. Not every hiccup needs a meltdown. Sometimes the most stoic move is not silence and not discipline, but lightness. A quiet smile that says, I see the chaos and I choose peace anyway. Notice how this changes your inner posture. When something goes wrong, you no longer lean forward with clenched fists. You soften, you observe, you respond instead of react. The world still throws its curveballs, but they bounce differently now. They hit less deeply. They pass more quickly. There is a strength hidden here that most people miss. When you can meet small annoyances with lightness, you free enormous reserves of energy. Energy that would have been wasted on irritation is now available for what actually matters. Your work, your relationships, your growth. Calm becomes sustainable, not fragile. So begin training a new reflex. When something trivial goes wrong, pause before reacting. Let your breath slow. Let a small grin appear, even if you are still annoyed. Especially if you are still annoyed, that grin is not surrender. It is perspective. It is your reminder that you are bigger than the moment, that you are not here to be tossed around by every small thing that crosses your path. Over time, this practice reshapes you. You stop living at the mercy of minor disruptions. You move through life with more grace, less tension, more clarity. The storms do not disappear, but they no longer feel personal. They become part of the weather. Something you pass through, not something that defines you. And this is where the deeper calm begins to take root. A calm that is not brittle. A calm that does not shatter when plans change or people disappoint you. A calm that knows when to take things seriously and when to let them roll past without a fight. Sometimes wisdom looks like discipline. Sometimes it looks like restraint. And sometimes, quietly, it looks like a laugh that reminds you that peace is always closer than you think. From here, imagine standing in the middle of a conversation that is heating up, words lining themselves up in your mind, like weapons you know how to use. You can already see how it would end if you let them fly. You would win. You would land the sharper point. You would walk away technically correct. And yet something inside you hesitates, not from fear, not from doubt, but from a quiet knowing that victory here would cost more than it gives. This is where a different kind of strength begins to show itself. Now, imagine how often this happens in everyday life. A disagreement that turns personal. A comment that pokes at your pride. A challenge that dares you to prove yourself. You feel the pull to step in, to dominate the moment, to make sure the other person understands exactly where they stand. But pause and ask yourself honestly, how many arguments have you won only to feel strangely hollow afterward? You were right. Your logic was sound. Your words landed. And still, later that night, something felt off. Heavy, agitated, not peaceful. This is because the goal was never truth. It was control, and control, no matter how cleanly it is exercised, rarely brings calm. The Stoics understood this with unsettling clarity. They spoke of a state of inner steadiness that remains untouched by the noise of others, a composure that does not rise and fall with every provocation. Marcus Aurelius, a man surrounded by conflict and pressure, wrote that the best revenge is to be unlike the one who causes harm, not to outmaneuver them, not to humiliate them, but to refuse to descend into their disorder. Think about what that really means. When someone provokes you and you react, you meet them on their level, you accept their terms, you enter their storm. But when you choose to step back, when you walk away from a fight you could easily win, you are not conceding ground, you are choosing altitude. You're saying this chaos does not get to shape who I become in this moment. This is not easy. Walking away tests the ego more than fighting ever will, because fighting gives the ego what it wants: attention, validation, the sense of being right. Walking away asks a harder question. Who am I if I don't prove myself here? Plato believed that self-mastery was the highest form of freedom, and nowhere is that more visible than in moments when you feel provoked and still choose restraint. Notice how often triggers have little to do with the other person. They awaken something inside you, the need to be seen, to be heard, to be respected, to be right. When someone touches those nerves, the reaction feels urgent, necessary, justified. But not every trigger deserves a response. Some are simply invitations to observe, to notice what is being stirred within you without acting it out. Imagine a conversation slowly sliding away from ideas and toward accusation, toward gossip, toward ego. You feel the familiar tension building. This is the moment most people lean forward. The Stoic leans back, not disengaged, but discerning. Socrates warned that not all conversations are worth entering. Strong minds concern themselves with what shapes life. Lesser ones get trapped in noise. When you recognize the shift, you gain a choice. You can spend your energy here, or you can keep it for something that actually builds the life you want. Energy is currency. Once it is spent, it does not return. Every argument you engage in costs something. Sometimes the cost is small, sometimes it is enormous. Peace, connection, clarity, even self-respect. The Stoic question is never "can I win this?" It is this worth my energy? And more importantly, who do I become if I stay? This is where discernment replaces impulsive strength. Walking away does not mean letting people walk over you. It does not mean avoiding difficult conversations that need to happen. It means choosing timing, choosing terrain, choosing intention. There is a difference between defending your values and defending your ego. One builds you, the other drains you. Picture yourself leaving an argument unresolved. No dramatic exit, no final remark. Just silence and distance. At first it feels unfinished, uncomfortable, but then something settles. Your breath deepens, your thoughts slow. You realize that you did not lose anything essential. In fact, you protected something rare, your inner order, the ability to remain yourself even when others lose theirs. Over time, this choice changes how people interact with you. Those who thrive on conflict find less to grab onto. Those who respect calm adjust their tone. And even when nothing external changes, something internal does. You are no longer pulled by every provocation. You are no longer on a leash held by whoever knows how to press your buttons. You are free. There is a quiet confidence that grows when you stop needing to win every exchange. You speak when it matters. You stay silent when it doesn't. You defend your truth without turning every conversation into a battlefield. And when you do walk away, you do it without resentment, without the need to replay the scene, without carrying the weight home with you. Ask yourself this: what kind of life are you trying to build? One filled with small victories that leave you restless, or one shaped by steady calm that compounds over time? You can win the argument and still lose the connection. You can prove your point and still lose your composure. You can dominate the moment and still lose yourself. The real win is quieter, knowing when to speak, knowing when to stay silent, knowing when to stand your ground, and when to step away with your dignity intact. Not everything deserves your reaction. Not every challenge is yours to accept. Save your energy for what actually shapes your future. Let the rest pass. And as you begin to do this consistently, something remarkable happens. You stop measuring strength by how loudly you can respond and start measuring it by how little control others have over your inner state. Peace becomes less fragile. Calm becomes less conditional. You are no longer proving anything. You are simply becoming. And that, more than any argument you could win, is the strength that carries you forward into what comes next. At this stage, imagine noticing a subtle shift inside yourself, the kind that doesn't announce itself loudly, the kind you only recognize after the moment has passed. Someone cuts in line, a comment lands with a sharp edge, a message is read and left unanswered. And for a split second, the old reflex reaches for you. The urge to react, to correct, to prove. But then something else steps in. A quiet choice, a calm refusal. Not because you don't care, but because you care enough to protect what matters. There is a quiet pride in that moment. Not the hollow kind that pretends indifference, not the mask of someone who says nothing touches them, but the grounded kind that says, I choose peace over pettiness. Life offers endless invitations to lose your balance. Small ones, constant ones, and most people accept them without question. They let their mood be shaped by traffic, by tone, by timing. The Stoics saw this pattern clearly. They didn't aim to feel nothing. They aimed to master everything within their reach. Marcus Aurelius, a man who carried the weight of an empire, reminded himself that power over the mind matters far more than power over events. That line is easy to admire and hard to live, because it quietly exposes an uncomfortable truth. When someone's attitude ruins your day, it is not proof of their power. It is evidence of unfinished work inside you, not a failure, a signal. Now imagine approaching your day differently, not as a series of obstacles to endure, but as a training ground. Every irritation becomes a test. Every provocation becomes a rep. What if staying calm wasn't a moral burden, but a game you learn to play well? This is where discipline becomes lighter, almost playful. You stop seeing restraint as deprivation and start seeing it as skill. Picture it clearly. Someone cuts you off in traffic. The familiar surge rises, and then you breathe. You let it go. Quietly. That's a point. Someone speaks to you with unnecessary edge. You smile, steady, unhooked. Another point. No applause, no scoreboard on the wall, just an inner tally that no one else sees. Over time, something strange happens. You begin to look forward to these moments, not because you enjoy irritation, but because you enjoy mastery. This is how strength is built, not in grand gestures, but in the moments you don't react. Aristotle observed that what lies within our power to do also lies within our power not to do. You can always speak, you can always fire back, but the moments that shape character are the ones where you choose restraint, where you pause long enough to remember who you are becoming. There is nothing passive about this. It takes effort, attention, presence. Each time you stop yourself from snapping, from gossiping, from feeding a pointless exchange, you reinforce a deeper habit. You are not suppressing emotion, you are guiding it. You are lifting yourself above the impulse instead of being dragged by it. The Stoics spoke often of self-conquest, not as a single victory, but as a daily practice. Plato believed the first and greatest triumph is mastery over oneself, and that triumph rarely looks dramatic. It happens in silence, in the comments you ignore, in the rumors you refuse to pass along, in the thoughts you question before they harden into action. Notice how this changes your relationship with time. You stop wasting it on emotional cleanup. Fewer apologies are needed. Fewer nights are spent replaying conversations. Your mind becomes quieter, not because nothing happens, but because fewer things are allowed to stay. Calm stops being fragile. It becomes practiced. This approach also reveals something humbling. Much of what we call personality is habit. When you snap without thinking, you are not expressing truth. You are repeating a pattern. When you pause and respond with intention, you interrupt that pattern. Over and over, these interruptions reshape you. You are no longer being led by what feels familiar. You are choosing what is aligned. It's important to say this clearly. This path is not about becoming cold or detached from life. It is about becoming engaged in the right way, fully present, fully aware. You still feel frustration, you still notice disrespect, but you are no longer owned by it. You decide how much space it gets. As you practice this, a deeper confidence begins to form. Not loud, not performative, quiet. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. You walk differently, you listen more, you react less. People sense it. Some test it. Some respect it. Either way, you remain steady. Think about how different your days feel when fewer moments knock you off center. How much energy is returned to you when you stop leaking it into trivial conflicts. That energy compounds. It sharpens your focus. It deepens your relationships. It strengthens your sense of direction. So begin tracking your calm, not as a judgment, but as a practice. Notice the moments you stay grounded. Acknowledge them, not with arrogance, but with quiet satisfaction. Each one is proof that you are not here to be easily shaken. You are here to lead yourself. It won't be perfect. Some days you will slip. You will react. You will feel it afterward. That's part of the process. What matters is not flawless control, but consistent return. Each time you choose not to react, you reinforce who you are becoming. This is the real game, not domination, not avoidance, self-leadership. Calm as a skill, peace as a practice. And the more you play it, the more natural it becomes. You stop asking how to stay unbothered. You simply are. And from this place, something opens. A deeper layer of steadiness. A calm that no longer needs effort to maintain. One that follows you quietly into whatever comes next. From here, imagine how tired you feel without fully knowing why. A quiet exhaustion that builds not from what people do, but from how much effort you spend wishing they would do something else. You wake up already carrying expectations, already rehearsing how the day should unfold, how people should speak, how situations should resolve themselves. And when reality deviates, even slightly, something inside tightens. disappointment creeps in, confusion follows, sometimes even betrayal. This is where most of our daily suffering begins, long before any real harm occurs. Now imagine looking at it honestly. How often have you been hurt, not by an action itself, but by the fact that it didn't match the story you were holding in your mind? You expected your friend to always show up. You expected your partner to never wound you. You expected your boss to act with fairness and clarity, and when they didn't, it felt personal, heavy, as if something sacred had been violated. But here is the uncomfortable truth we rarely admit. That script was yours. You wrote it quietly. You just never told the other person they were expected to perform in it. This is where Stoic wisdom cuts cleanly. Epictetus, one of the clearest voices of the Stoic tradition, reduced an entire philosophy to a single dividing line. Some things are up to us, some things are not. That's it. Simple, relentless. And at first, it feels harsh, because it strips away hope that the world will eventually behave the way we want. But hidden inside that line is enormous relief. The moment you stop expecting people to be different than they are and start focusing on how you choose to respond, something loosens. Your mind exhales. You reclaim your sanity. Notice what happens when you stop arguing with reality. You stop waking up each day waiting for people to finally get it, waiting for fairness to arrive on schedule, waiting for life to correct itself. That waiting is exhausting. It keeps you suspended between what is and what you wish were true. The Stoics refused to live there. They chose to stand firmly in what is, not because they liked it, but because resisting reality only hands it more power. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the world does not exist to meet our preferences. People act from their own understanding, their own limitations, their own confusion. When you forget this, you take everything personally. When you remember it, much of the sting disappears. Not because people suddenly behave better, but because you stop demanding that they do. Think about a familiar loop. The boss remains unfair. The friend keeps flaking. The relationship never quite becomes what you hoped it would be. And each time, your mind circles the same question. Why are they like this? It feels like analysis, but it isn't. It's drainage. That question rarely leads to clarity. It only keeps you emotionally tethered to something you cannot control. The Stoic question is quieter and far more powerful. What is in my control right now? Not can I change them, not can I make this fair, but can I control how much space this takes up in my mind? Can I control my reaction? Can I control whether their behavior gets to dictate my inner state? The moment you ask this, the balance of power shifts back to you. Plato taught that the mind shapes how reality is experienced. Change the lens, and the world looks different without changing at all. Stoicism builds on this, not as optimism, but as precision. It asks you to refine perception, not demand perfection from life. When you stop insisting that others behave in ways that soothe you, you become steadier, less reactive, less disappointed, more present. Acceptance is often misunderstood. It sounds like surrender, like giving up. But the Stoics saw it differently. Acceptance is not approval. It is clarity. It is saying, I see this situation as it is. I don't like it. I wouldn't choose it. But I will not let it own me. The longer you resist what is, the longer it controls you. The moment you accept it, you regain ground. Socrates spoke of focusing energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. That includes how you relate to expectations. Each time you release a demand that someone must behave a certain way for you to feel okay, you remove a hook from your mind. You stop outsourcing your peace. You stop borrowing calm from circumstances. You begin building it from within. This shift is subtle, but its effects are profound. You suffer less, not because life becomes easier, but because you stop adding friction. You stop living in a fantasy version of how things should be and start engaging with the reality in front of you. And paradoxically, from that grounded place, you make better decisions, clearer boundaries, stronger choices. Notice how freeing it feels when your peace no longer depends on someone else's behavior, when their mood doesn't dictate yours, when their flaws don't define your day. This is not emotional detachment, it is emotional independence, a calm that does not rise and fall with conditions, a steadiness that remains even when the world does not cooperate. At this stage, power looks different. It is no longer about influencing others. It is about governing yourself. You stop trying to manage people's paths. You stop carrying disappointment that was born from unspoken expectations. You let people be who they are, and in doing so, you free yourself to be who you are. This does not make you passive. It makes you precise. You engage where it matters. You release where it doesn't. You choose responses that align with your values rather than your hopes. Over time, this practice changes how you move through life. Fewer emotional spikes, fewer internal arguments, more space, more clarity. And this is where real calm begins to take root. Not the fragile kind that shatters when plans fall apart, but a solid calm built on acceptance and agency, a calm that understands the limits of control and finds freedom within them. Once you stop needing everyone around you to act right for you to feel right, something opens. A new kind of freedom, a peace that isn't dependent, a strength that isn't borrowed. This is not the end of the path. It is a foundation. Because once you accept reality as it is, you are finally positioned to act wisely within it. And from that grounded place, the next layer of Stoic calm begins to reveal itself. Now imagine stepping into this stage of the journey and noticing how quickly your mind turns inward the moment something feels off. A message unanswered, a look that feels cold, a distance you did not expect. And before you can stop it, a quiet interrogation begins. Did I say something wrong? Did I upset them? Did I mess this up somehow? This reflex is fast, automatic, almost invisible, and yet it shapes more of your inner world than most people realize. From here, the pattern becomes familiar. Someone does not reply. A co-worker passes you without warmth. A friend grows quiet without explanation. And your mind rushes to fill the silence with meaning, usually harsh meaning. You replay conversations. You scan your memory for mistakes. You assign yourself responsibility for moods you did not create. It feels personal because it feels close. But closeness does not mean cause. And this is where Stoic clarity cuts through one of the most exhausting habits of the human mind. Marcus Aurelius prepared himself each morning by remembering that the people he would meet would be distracted, ungrateful, jealous, and difficult. Not because he hated people, but because he understood them. This was not pessimism, it was realism. He knew that most behavior comes from inner turbulence, not deliberate attack. When you hold this perspective, something shifts. You stop assuming intent where there may be none. You stop turning every moment into a verdict on your worth. Think about how much is happening inside the average person. Pressure you cannot see. Fatigue they cannot name. Responsibilities they carry quietly. When those inner weights spill outward, they often land on whoever is closest. Sometimes that happens to be you. Not because you are the cause, but because you are present. Taking this personally only multiplies suffering. This does not mean nothing ever matters. It means not everything is about you. And there is deep freedom in that realization. Plato taught that we do not see the world as it is, but as we are. Our inner state colors perception. When you are already tired or insecure, a neutral moment can feel like rejection. A delayed response can feel like abandonment. A distracted tone can feel like disrespect. The Stoic practice is not denial. It is examination. Pause. Look again. Ask yourself a quieter question. What else could this mean? This single pause opens space. It breaks the illusion that your first interpretation is truth. Epictetus reminded his students to distinguish between appearances and reality. Appearances rush in fast. Reality requires patience. When you slow down, many imagined slights dissolve on their own. Here is another truth most people never consider. You are not the center of everyone else's story, and that is not an insult. It is a relief. It means you do not have to carry their emotions. You do not have to fix their moods. You do not have to solve the storms they are fighting internally. Aristotle once suggested that avoiding criticism would require doing nothing and being nothing, and even then, peace would not be guaranteed. People project regardless. The question is whether you absorb it. This is where boundaries begin inside the mind. Not walls, space. Enough distance to say maybe this is not mine to hold. Enough clarity to let someone else's behavior pass through without lodging inside you. When you create that space, reactions soften. You stop chasing explanations. You stop demanding reassurance from silence. Think of how often silence triggers self-blame. A pause in communication becomes a verdict. A shift in tone becomes a diagnosis, and the story your mind writes is rarely kind. But Socrates believed wisdom begins in knowing how little we truly know, including why people act the way they do. When you remember this, you stop filling in gaps with accusations against yourself. You begin to respond differently. When someone snaps, you do not immediately shrink. When someone withdraws, you do not automatically chase. You observe, you breathe, you let the moment reveal itself over time. Often it does, and often the truth has nothing to do with you. This does not make you indifferent. It makes you steady. You remain open without being porous. You care without collapsing inward. You stop tying your self-respect to other people's behavior. That is not emotional distance, it is emotional clarity. Notice how this changes your inner dialogue. Fewer harsh questions, less self-interrogation, more calm observation. You begin to trust yourself enough not to panic at every shift. You stop treating uncertainty as danger. You allow people to be human without making yourself responsible for their humanity. There will still be moments that sting. That does not disappear. But when it happens, you recognize the signal. Is this about what just happened, or about something older being touched? Is this truly a reflection of my worth, or just my mind reacting to discomfort? This awareness is power, quiet power. Stoic strength does not come from hardening the heart. It comes from anchoring it. Holding your center even when others lose theirs, remaining clear when the environment is unclear, responding instead of spiraling, choosing understanding over assumption, and sometimes the kindest act you can offer yourself is restraint, not rushing to conclusions, not personalizing what may have nothing to do with you, letting uncertainty exist without filling it with self-judgment. That restraint preserves energy, it preserves dignity, it preserves peace. As you practice this, a new calm settles in. A calm that does not depend on constant reassurance. A calm that does not fracture under silence. A calm that understands that most people are fighting battles you will never see, and you are not required to carry those battles for them. This is not withdrawal from life. It is engagement with clarity. You stay present, you stay aware, you stay grounded, you learn to hold your ground without hardening your edges. You stop drowning in other people's weather. And from this place, something subtle but powerful emerges. You move through the world lighter, less reactive, less burdened by imagined meanings. You remain yourself even when others are not. That is Stoic strength. Not loud, not defensive, steady. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to take things personally. Not because nothing matters, but because your peace matters more. And once you understand that, you are ready to step into the next layer of calm, one that builds not from avoidance, but from deep inner clarity. At this stage, imagine the moment just before anger takes over, that sharp rush when your body tightens and your thoughts suddenly feel fast and clear, almost electric, as if you've been handed armor and told to charge. Your heart pounds, your words line up, louder and sharper than usual. In that instant, anger feels powerful. It feels like control. It feels like strength. And that is why it's dangerous. Now imagine what comes after. The room goes quiet. The adrenaline fades. The sentence you released hangs in the air, heavy and irreversible. There's distance where connection used to be. An awkward silence that doesn't know how to heal itself. Trust cracked, sometimes beyond repair. Anger never advertises this part. It arrives disguised. It tells you it's here to protect you, to defend your ground, to make sure you're not ignored. But once the moment passes, you realize it didn't protect anything. It took. The Stoics understood this deception well. They saw anger as a skilled actor, convincing, dramatic, persuasive in the moment, but unreliable when the consequences arrive. It promises relief and delivers damage. It urges action, then vanishes when accountability shows up. Like a reckless companion who encourages you to leap, then disappears when you hit the ground. You're left alone to clean up the mess, to explain yourself, to live with what cannot be taken back. From here, the Stoic path takes a different turn. Instead of asking how to express anger better, it asks a quieter question. What is this energy really pointing to? That surge you feel, that urge to snap, is rarely about the surface event. It's a signal, a flare rising from within, alerting you that something deeper has been touched. A boundary, a value, a vulnerability. When you pause long enough to see that, anger loses its spell. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the mind has the power to step back and examine impressions before accepting them. That pause is everything. In that space, you reclaim choice. You stop being carried by the current and place your feet on the ground. You realize you don't have to explode to be heard. You don't have to burn the field to mark your territory. This is where many people get confused. They fear that calm looks like weakness, that restraint looks like surrender, that if they don't react strongly, they will be overlooked or dismissed. But Plato understood something most never learn. True courage is not loud. It is selective. It knows when to act and when not to. Sometimes the greatest fear we carry is the fear of appearing weak, and anger feeds on that fear. Look closely at the people you admire most, the ones who remain centered when everyone else is spinning, the ones whose presence steadies a room rather than inflaming it. That is not passivity. That is strength with roots, strength that does not need to shout to be felt. The Stoics often spoke of fire as a metaphor for inner energy. Fire can warm a home or reduce it to ash. The difference is not the fire itself, but how it is used. Anger carries energy, focus, urgency. The Stoic does not deny that. He redirects it. Instead of letting it scorch everything in reach, he lets it illuminate. Instead of turning it into an attack, he turns it into clarity. Picture a moment when anger rises, and instead of lashing out, you use that energy to draw a boundary, calmly, firmly, without venom, or you let it sharpen your understanding of what matters and what does not. You act, but you do not attack. You speak, but you do not wound. This is not suppression, it is command. Aristotle captured this balance with unsettling precision when he said that anyone can become angry. But to be angry with the right person, at the right time, for the right reason, and in the right way, that is rare. That rarity is discipline. Not discipline imposed from the outside, but chosen from within. It is the difference between being owned by emotion and owning your response. Notice how this reframes the moment anger appears. It is no longer an emergency, it is information. It tells you something matters. The Stoic listens, then decides. He does not hand the wheel to impulse, he keeps it. Think of how different your life becomes when you stop equating volume with power. When you realize that staying calm longer is far more effective than yelling louder. You can be assertive without being aggressive, clear without being cruel, firm without being destructive. These are not compromises, they are refinements. And here is the quiet truth most people never discover. Anger often feels like strength because it temporarily removes doubt. It narrows your focus. But that narrowing is a loss, not a gain. Calm widens perspective. It gives you options. It allows you to choose outcomes rather than endure consequences. The Stoic does not fear emotion. He fears blindness. He knows that reacting without awareness costs more than it ever gives. So when the fire rises, he does not rush to extinguish it or unleash it. He contains it. He uses it. He respects it enough not to let it ruin what took years to build. Imagine respecting yourself enough to pause, not because you are afraid to speak, but because you value what you are protecting, your integrity, your relationships, your peace. That pause is not hesitation. It is wisdom in motion. Over time, this practice changes you. Anger still appears, but it no longer runs the house. It knocks. You answer. You decide what happens next. You are no longer surprised by regret. You are no longer cleaning up emotional wreckage you created in a moment you barely remember. This is what emotional discipline looks like when it is lived, not preached, not cold, not detached, grounded, intentional, strong. You stand your ground without burning it. You leave conversations with your dignity intact. You walk away without dragging the moment behind you. And slowly, something settles, a calm that does not feel fragile, a confidence that does not need to prove itself. You realize that real power was never about intensity. It was about steadiness, not about striking first, about standing firm. Because in the end, anger does not make you formidable. Mastery does. And mastery is built in the moments when you choose awareness over impulse, clarity over explosion, and calm over chaos. That choice repeated becomes strength that lasts. At this stage, imagine the quiet weight you've been carrying without always noticing it, not the original pain itself, because that came and went, but the story that stayed behind, the replay that returns uninvited, the words someone said, the silence they left, the apology that never arrived. Each time the memory surfaces, the sting feels fresh, as if time never passed. Your body tightens, your breath shortens, the wound feels open again. And yet, if you're honest, it isn't new pain. It's old. It's scar tissue you keep touching, wondering why it still hurts. Now imagine the other side of that memory. The person who hurt you has likely moved on. They're living their day, focused on errands, conversations, small worries that have nothing to do with you. They are not replaying the moment. They are not rehearsing your pain. Meanwhile, you carry it with you, like a heavy bag you never set down, letting their words live rent-free in your mind. That imbalance is exhausting. And it is one of the quiet ways we give away our peace. This is where Stoic wisdom speaks without sentiment. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is to be unlike the one who caused the harm, not to outdo them, not to punish them, to refuse to let their actions reshape your inner world. Because when bitterness takes root, the injury doesn't end. It continues. Not through what they do, but through what you replay. That is not justice. That is surrender. Think about what resentment really is. It feels like strength at first, like holding the line, like refusing to let something slide. But over time, it becomes a loop, a rehearsal, a practice. And like any practice, it shapes you. Aristotle warned that we become what we repeatedly do. If you rehearse resentment, it becomes familiar, comfortable. It sets the tone of your inner life, not because it protects you, but because it occupies you. From here, the Stoic shift is subtle but decisive. Letting go is not erasing the past. It is refusing to let the past dictate who you become next. It is saying, yes, this happened. Yes, it hurt. And no, I will not keep bleeding for it. That decision is not for the person who wronged you. It is for you, for your sanity, for your future. Plato observed that the soul is harmed more by injustice committed than injustice received. When you hold on to anger, when you fantasize about proving your worth or getting even, you extend the harm. You tether your peace to someone who may never make things right. And as long as your peace depends on their awareness, their apology, their regret, it remains out of reach. Picture yourself saying the words quietly, without drama. This happened, it hurt, and it is over. Not because it was fair, not because it didn't matter, but because you are done letting it own you. These words do not excuse what happened, they release you from it. There is a difference. Letting go is not approval. It is closure you give yourself. Notice how resistance tightens the grip of memory. The more you argue with what already occurred, the more it stays alive. The Stoics did not aim to become cold or indifferent. They aimed to live wisely, to focus energy where it could still shape outcomes, to remain present rather than dragged backward by scenes that can no longer be changed. Think of how much life opens when you set the weight down. Fewer mental arguments, less replay, more space. You are no longer narrating your day through an old injury. You are no longer measuring the present against a past you cannot fix. You begin to move forward without constantly checking over your shoulder. There is also a quiet dignity in this choice. You take back authorship of your story. You decide that someone else's cruelty will not be the chapter that defines you. You choose what comes next, not because you forgot, but because you remember who you want to become. Forgiveness, in the Stoic sense, is not sentimental. It is strategic. It is choosing not to let your inner life be governed by someone else's worst moment. It is choosing clarity over rumination, strength over stagnation, forward motion over endless replay. This does not mean you trust blindly. It does not mean you reopen doors that should remain closed. Boundaries still stand. Lessons remain learned. Letting go simply means you stop carrying what no longer serves your growth. You stop sharpening a blade you never intend to use. Imagine how differently you stand when you're not weighed down by old grievances. Your posture changes, your breath deepens, your attention returns to what is in front of you. You become less reactive, not because nothing affects you, but because fewer things linger. The Stoics believed that peace lives in the present moment, not in revisiting what was taken, not in rehearsing what should have been said. Presence is where power is restored, and presence requires release. There is courage in this. Quiet courage. The courage to say, I carried this long enough. I learned what I needed to learn, and now I am setting it down. That decision does not erase the past. It frees the future. As you practice this, resentment loosens its hold. Memories soften. The charge fades. Not all at once. Gradually. Each time you choose not to revisit the wound, you weaken the habit. Each time you redirect your attention to what you are building now, you strengthen something new. And slowly, something remarkable happens. Calm stops being fragile. It no longer shatters when an old memory surfaces. It no longer depends on justice being served in the way you imagined. It becomes grounded, stable, yours. This is not forgetting. It is wisdom. Not indifference, but choice. The choice to live forward, to travel lighter, to let the past be a teacher, not a prison. So maybe real strength is not in holding on. Maybe it is in recognizing when your grip has outlived its purpose. In saying with clarity and resolve, I carried this through the storm. I survived it, and now I am free to walk on. Entering this stage, imagine the quiet tension that builds when you care deeply about someone and yet feel constantly frustrated by their choices, as if your concern has slowly turned into a weight you carry every day. It begins innocently. You want to help. You want to protect. You want to guide the people you love away from mistakes you've already learned from. But somewhere along the way, something shifts. Your peace starts to depend on whether they listen. Your mood rises and falls with their decisions. And without noticing, you've tied your inner balance to a life you cannot control. Now picture how exhausting that really is. You replay conversations in your head, thinking of better ways you could have explained yourself. You wait for signs that they finally understand. You feel anxious when they don't change, and relieved when they briefly do. Your energy is no longer focused on your own path. It's scattered across someone else's. What began as care has quietly become control. And control, no matter how well-intentioned, is a losing game. The Stoics were unflinching about this. Epictetus reduced the entire problem to a single boundary. Some things are within our power, some things are not. When we forget that boundary, we suffer. We think if we just say it more clearly, if we just care harder, if we just sacrifice a little more, people will change. But change does not happen on your timeline. It happens on theirs, if it happens at all. The moment you accept this, something inside you loosens. Think about how often your peace hinges on someone else's progress. A partner who won't grow the way you hoped. A child who keeps making choices you wouldn't make. A friend who repeats the same patterns. A co-worker who never quite gets it. Each time, your mind leans forward, trying to steer a wheel that was never in your hands. and each time frustration follows. Not because you are wrong to care, but because you are trying to control what is not yours to command. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that each person acts according to their own understanding of the world. No amount of pressure can replace that understanding. When you forget this, you turn yourself into a manager of lives you were never meant to run. When you remember it, you step back into your proper role, not as a controller, but as an example. This is where Stoic leadership quietly reveals itself. It is not loud, it does not force lessons, it does not hover over other people's choices. It lives in how you show up. Calm, consistent, clear. You model the steadiness you wish others had. You demonstrate restraint instead of preaching it. You embody the values you want to see without demanding that anyone follow you. Socrates believed true wisdom begins with knowing how little we truly know. That includes knowing what lessons another person must learn for themselves. You do not know what experience will finally reach them. You do not know what timing will make change possible. And trying to force insight on someone often does the opposite of what you intend. It creates resistance, distance, silence. Think about it honestly. Have you ever felt inspired by someone who constantly hovered over your choices? Someone whose concern felt like surveillance? Probably not. People rarely grow under pressure. They grow under trust, under space, under the quiet example of someone who is living well without insisting that others do the same. Aristotle taught that the value of life lies in awareness and contemplation, not mere activity. Awareness begins with recognizing limits. You can offer insight, you can extend patience, you can hold space. But the moment your inner peace depends on their outcome, you are in dangerous territory. You have handed them the keys to your emotional house, and most people don't even know they're holding them. So what is your real work here? It is not to micromanage grown lives. It is not to rescue people from lessons they are meant to learn. It is to govern yourself, to remain steady regardless of whether others choose wisely or poorly, to show kindness without attachment, to give advice without expecting obedience. This requires releasing an unspoken contract many of us carry, the contract that says you must change so I can be okay. That agreement is never honored because it was never signed. When you release it, you feel something unfamiliar at first. Space, silence, a gap where anxiety used to live. But inside that space, calm begins to grow. Let people walk their path, even when it looks messy, even when you would not take that route yourself. Their missteps are not your failure. Their delays are not your responsibility. You are allowed to care without carrying. You are allowed to love without controlling. And the freedom you give them quietly returns to you. This does not mean detachment from life. It means alignment with reality. You engage where you can act. You release where you cannot. You stop burning energy trying to rearrange people and invest it in refining yourself. That shift alone restores enormous peace. Notice how your posture changes when you stop managing everyone else. Your shoulders drop, your breath deepens, your mind clears. You respond instead of react. You speak with intention instead of urgency, and people feel that. Some will lean toward it, some will resist it. Either way, you remain grounded. This is real leadership, not dominance, presence, not pressure, consistency. You become someone others can observe without feeling judged, someone they can approach without feeling controlled, and whether they change or not, you remain whole. In this way, Stoic strength reveals its quiet paradox. By releasing control over others, you gain control over yourself. By letting go of outcomes, you reclaim your peace. By trusting people to walk their own path, you free yourself to walk yours fully. And that freedom does something profound. It restores calm not as a fragile state, but as a stable condition. A calm that does not depend on compliance. A peace that does not fluctuate with other people's decisions. A strength that does not need to intervene to exist. This is the path that actually brings peace, not just for them, but for you. At this stage, notice how quickly the mind rushes to fill the silence, how a small moment becomes a full narrative before you even realize what happened. A message goes unanswered. Someone interrupts you mid-sentence. A glance feels off, and almost instantly, your inner voice steps in to explain it all. They don't respect me. I don't matter. I'm being dismissed again. The body tightens, the chest warms, the mood shifts, and suddenly you are no longer responding to reality. You are responding to a story you wrote in your head, convincing enough to feel true, familiar enough to feel inevitable. Now imagine how many of your emotional reactions have been fueled not by events themselves, but by these unseen scripts. Not by what was said, but by what you assumed it meant. Not by what happened, but by what you told yourself it revealed about you. This is where the Stoics gently pull us back to center. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself again and again that you do not have to turn this into something. It does not have to upset you. That line sounds almost too simple until you sit with it, because inside it lives a quiet power. The power to pause between what happens and what you make it mean. Most people never pause there. They jump straight from stimulus to story, straight from sensation to judgment. And once the judgment is in place, the emotion follows like a loyal soldier. Anger, shame, defensiveness, withdrawal. The story becomes the lens through which everything else is filtered. And the more often you tell the same kind of story, the more convincing it becomes. The Stoic practice is not about denying feeling, it is about examining interpretation. Epictetus taught that people are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of things. That single idea dismantles half of our unnecessary suffering because it shifts the work inward. It asks a different question. Not what happened, but what did I decide this meant? Think about how automatic these decisions are. Many of them were written long before today. They were shaped by past disappointments, old betrayals, moments where you learned to read danger into silence or rejection into delay. Over time, those interpretations became habits, and habits feel like truth when you don't question them. This is where self-mastery begins. Not with changing others, not with controlling outcomes, but with learning to catch the story as it forms. The Stoics practiced this daily. They trained themselves to notice impressions the moment they appeared, to say, "This is just an appearance. Let me look closer." Picture a moment from your own life. Someone gives you feedback that feels sharp. Your first impulse is to defend yourself, to feel attacked. But if you slow it down, if you separate the raw event from the meaning you assign to it, you may notice other possibilities. Maybe they were blunt, not cruel. Maybe they were rushed, not dismissive. Maybe this moment is uncomfortable, but not dangerous. The meaning shifts, and with it, the emotion softens. Socrates believed the unexamined life was not worth living. That wasn't about constant self-criticism. It was about refusing to live on autopilot, refusing to let inherited stories dictate present reactions. Examination is how you reclaim authorship. This kind of awareness starts in the body. Before the words in your head, there is a signal, a tightening, a heat, a rush. That is your cue. Not to react, but to pause, to breathe, to say, something just got triggered. Let me look. From there, restraint becomes possible, not suppression. Restraint. You slow the response. You give yourself space. You stop feeding the first interpretation just because it arrived first. And then comes the most important step: direction. Choosing a more grounded meaning, not the most flattering one, not the most dramatic one. The truest one you can find in that moment. Aristotle believed wisdom begins in wonder, so wonder when you feel provoked. Wonder if the story is accurate or just familiar. Wonder if this moment is asking for the same old reaction or inviting a different one. That curiosity alone interrupts the cycle. Notice how different life feels when you stop personalizing every small rupture, when you stop assuming intent where there may be none, when you stop turning neutral moments into verdicts on your worth. You begin to move through the day with more space inside you, less tension, fewer inner arguments, more clarity. This does not mean you become naive. It means you become precise. You still recognize patterns. You still set boundaries when needed, but you do not let your emotions be hijacked by every interpretation that passes through your mind. Over time, this practice changes you. You become less reactive, not because you care less, but because you see more clearly. You learn that most moments are not personal. They are just life colliding with life, messy, incomplete, unfinished. And when something truly does require a response, you meet it from steadiness, not assumption, from intention, not impulse. That is Stoic mastery, the ability to remain sovereign over your inner world, even when the outer world is unclear. You cannot stop thoughts from appearing, but you can choose which ones you believe. You cannot prevent impressions from arising, but you can decide how much authority they have. That choice, practiced again and again, rewrites the script your mind runs by default. So the next time a familiar story starts to form, catch it mid-sentence. Pause. Ask yourself what else could be true. Ask whether this interpretation serves your peace or steals it. And remember that you are not required to accept every narrative your mind offers, because calm is not found by controlling events. It is built by mastering meaning. And the moment you become the author of your response, rather than a character trapped in old stories, you step into a different way of living, steadier, clearer, free. At this stage, picture the familiar tightening in your chest as a disagreement begins, that subtle shift where curiosity quietly steps aside and the need to be right takes its place, where the room no longer feels like a space for understanding, but like an arena. Most of us do not enter arguments seeking clarity. We enter seeking victory. Somewhere beneath the surface, a voice whispers that being right will restore balance, that winning will soothe the discomfort. And that is exactly where things start to unravel. Because once pride grips the wheel, truth becomes secondary and the real issue fades into the background. Now imagine how quickly a conversation changes the moment ego arrives. Words sharpen. Listening fades. While the other person speaks, your mind is already loading the next response, rehearsing the perfect comeback, searching for leverage. You are no longer present. You are preparing for impact. This is not dialogue. It is combat, disguised as communication. And nothing meaningful grows in a battlefield. The Stoics understood this trap well. They saw how easily the desire to dominate replaces the desire to understand. Epictetus offered a simple reminder that cuts through the noise. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Not to win debates. To listen more than we speak. In moments of tension, that reminder becomes a discipline, because listening when you are triggered feels unnatural. It feels like vulnerability, but in truth, it is strength under control. Notice what actually stings in an argument. Often it is not the words themselves, but what they touch inside you. A sense of being dismissed, a fear of not being respected, an old insecurity that wakes up fast and loud. If you react from that place, the argument escalates. If you pause long enough to see it, something else becomes possible. You stop fighting shadows. You begin responding to reality. Here is the quiet shift that changes everything. What if you entered disagreements with a different aim, not to win, not to prove, but to resolve, to understand, to protect your integrity rather than your image? That intention alone softens your posture. It lowers your shoulders. It slows your speech. It changes the entire tone of the exchange. Imagine doing something that feels almost counterintuitive in conflict, lowering your voice. The instinct when we feel threatened is to raise it, to speak louder, faster, harder. But a calm voice has gravity. It disarms. It signals that you are not here to attack or defend, but to engage. Calm does not inflame. Calm anchors. Then consider the power of better questions, not questions designed to trap or expose, but questions that open space. Instead of "how could you say that?" you ask what led you to feel that way. Instead of "what is your problem?" you ask "what are you really trying to communicate?" These questions are not tactics, they are bridges. They invite the other person out of their defensive posture and into reflection, and often they invite you there too. Aristotle believed wisdom lives in knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. In conflict, that wisdom shows itself not in clever arguments, but in restraint. In the ability to pause, to say "help me understand," and mean it. Those words, spoken sincerely, can dissolve tension that shouting never could. They remind both sides that this is a conversation between humans, not a contest between egos. There is also a deeper truth here. When everyone else is reactive, the calmest person becomes the anchor, not by trying to control the room, but by stabilizing themselves. Composure is magnetic. People feel it. They respond to it. In heated situations, calm becomes leadership without effort. Strength that does not shout is rare, and rare things set the tone. Think about the arguments you regret most. Rarely are they the ones you lost. They are the ones where you lost yourself, where you said something you cannot take back, where you compromised your values for the sake of being right. Winning the argument did not restore peace, it stole it. Stoic thinking invites a different metric of success. Not did I win, but did I remain grounded? Not did I dominate, but did I act with character? That shift changes how you measure yourself. Integrity replaces approval. Presence replaces performance. This does not mean avoiding difficult conversations. It means entering them with intention. You still speak your truth. You still set boundaries. But you do so without letting emotion hijack your voice. You stand firm without becoming sharp, clear without becoming cruel. Picture how different conflicts feel when you refuse to be pulled into escalation, when you respond instead of react, when you stay slow while others rush. The entire dynamic changes. The argument either de-escalates or reveals itself as something you no longer need to engage with. Either way, you remain whole. This approach requires practice. It is not natural at first. Ego will protest. The urge to defend will flare. But each time you choose calm over victory, something strengthens inside you. You prove to yourself that your worth is not dependent on being right in every moment. You build trust with yourself. Over time, people begin to notice, not because you lecture them, but because your presence shifts the room. You listen when others interrupt. You ask when others accuse. You pause when others rush. And slowly, the tone around you changes. Not always, but often enough to matter. This is how leaders move. Not through force, but through steadiness. Not through dominance, but through clarity. Stoic calm does not withdraw from conflict. It transforms it. So the next time you feel the pull to win an argument, pause. Ask yourself what you really want. If it is peace, choose presence. If it is integrity, choose restraint. If it is resolution, choose understanding. Because arguments end, words fade, but how you carried yourself stays. And that is where real change begins, not in proving a point, but in proving to yourself that you can remain centered when others are not, that you can speak without striking, that you can stand your ground without losing your calm. That is Stoic strength in motion. At this stage, imagine sitting quietly, thinking you are fine, thinking you are calm, and yet your body is already shifting ahead of your thoughts, your jaw tightening as if bracing for impact, your chest growing heavy as if something unseen has settled there, your breath shortening before a single word is spoken. Nothing obvious has happened yet, and still, something inside you is preparing. Then, almost on cue, a small comment lands the wrong way. A delay irritates you, a tone feels sharp, and suddenly the reaction arrives. It feels instant, but if you look honestly, it wasn't sudden at all. That moment was only the last drop. The tension had been accumulating long before your mind caught up. Now imagine how often this happens without you noticing. You push through the day, staying busy, staying distracted, telling yourself you're fine, while your body quietly keeps score. Every unresolved frustration, every swallowed response, every moment you chose endurance over awareness. The Stoics understood this long before modern language tried to name it. They observed that disturbances do not arrive fully formed, they build, and if you ignore the early signs, they arrive louder. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by events themselves, but by how we receive them. But here is the deeper layer many miss. Before the mind forms its judgment, the body often reacts first. A tightening, a clenching, a subtle withdrawal. These are not flaws, they are signals. They are the earliest warnings that your inner balance is shifting. Most people treat these signals as inconveniences. They ignore them, they override them with effort or distraction. They stay busy until the pressure has nowhere left to go. And then, when it finally bursts, they wonder where it came from. They blame the moment, the person, the situation. But the truth is quieter and harder. The storm was forming long before it broke. Socrates believed that real change does not come from fighting what already exists, but from building something new. Awareness is how you begin building. Awareness is how you interrupt the cycle before it owns you. When you learn to notice the early signals, you gain time, and time is everything. Picture this shift. Instead of waiting for the explosion, you start listening for the whisper. The clenched jaw becomes information, not failure. The heavy chest becomes a message, not an enemy. You stop treating tension as something to suppress and start treating it as something to understand. This is not softness. This is discipline at a deeper level. The Stoic path was never about ignoring the body. It was about aligning it with reason. The body is where impressions arrive first. When you learn to notice them early, you prevent reason from being hijacked later. You give yourself the chance to respond instead of react. Now imagine a different response the next time tension appears. You pause. You do not move toward the trigger. You do not rush to explain or defend. You simply breathe, slowly, deliberately, in through the nose. A brief hold, a long release. The body begins to settle before the mind spirals. And in that space, a question emerges. Not what just happened, but what is this touching inside me? That question changes everything. It shifts your attention inward, where control actually lives. You may notice fear, a sense of being dismissed, an old pattern waking up. Not to judge it, just to see it. Seeing it already weakens its grip. Plato spoke of the body as the vessel through which the soul moves. If that is true, then ignoring the body is ignoring half of your wisdom. Listening to it is not indulgence, it is precision. It is how you become less chaotic and more composed without forcing yourself into numbness. Over time, this practice rewires how you move through the world. The body stops shouting because it knows it will be heard. The mind stops being ambushed because it arrives informed, not overwhelmed. Calm becomes proactive instead of reactive. Notice how different this feels from suppression. You are not pushing feelings down. You are catching them early. You are meeting tension before it turns into anger, frustration, or withdrawal. You are working with your inner signals, not against them. The world will continue to test you. People will still say careless things. Plans will still fall apart. Delays will still happen. None of that changes. What changes is your timing. You no longer wait until you are already lost in reaction. You intervene earlier, quietly, effectively. And something subtle happens when you live this way. Others feel it. Your presence steadies. Your reactions slow. Your responses become measured. You stop carrying tension from moment to moment. You move through situations instead of being dragged by them. This is Stoic resilience in its most practical form. Not toughness through force, but strength through awareness. Not control through suppression, but mastery through understanding. Your body is not betraying you when it tightens. It is warning you. It is asking for attention before the damage is done. When you respect that signal, you protect your peace long before it is threatened. Most people only notice the storm once it arrives. The Stoic learns to read the weather. And when you do, calm stops being something you scramble to recover. It becomes something you preserve, quietly, consistently, from the inside out. That is not just composure, that is preparedness. And preparedness is the deepest form of calm. Entering this moment, picture your attention like an open gate at dawn, quiet but unguarded, while the world lines up with hands outstretched, each one asking for a piece of you, some politely, some aggressively, some disguised as concern, others as provocation. Before the day even warms up, your focus is already under negotiation. A comment flashes across a screen. A tone at work feels off. A name from the past resurfaces just to see if the door is still unlocked. None of this feels dramatic on its own, yet by nightfall you feel drained, irritated, scattered, and you can't quite explain why. Now imagine realizing that nothing was taken from you by force. You handed it over, not all at once, but in small, unnoticed transactions. A reaction here, a glance there, a moment of attention spent on something that never intended to give anything back. This is where the Stoics draw a hard line, not between good and bad people, but between what deserves you and what does not. They understood that calm is not only protected by restraint, but by selection. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself as if reminding a soldier on watch. He warned that the mind becomes colored by what it dwells on, not what passes by, but what you invite in and keep. This is where many lose their peace without realizing it. They think the disturbance comes from the insult, the drama, the noise. In truth, it comes from engagement, from staying longer than necessary, from feeding what should have been starved. Consider how quickly one careless remark can grow when you give it your full attention. It becomes an inner dialogue, then a mood, then a lens through which the rest of the day is filtered. The Stoics observed this pattern relentlessly. They saw that attention magnifies whatever it rests upon. Feed chaos, and it grows. Feed clarity, and it steadies you. Socrates believed wisdom was not found in knowing everything, but in knowing what matters. That insight cuts straight through modern noise. Before reacting, before responding, before even mentally chewing on something, there is a simple, powerful question. Does this deserve me? Not can I handle it? Not am I right? But does this deserve my presence, my energy, my inner space? That question alone can stop most disturbances before they begin. Now imagine applying that filter consistently. You notice the drama, but you don't step into it. You see the provocation, but you don't pick it up. Not because you are indifferent, but because you are disciplined. Aristotle spoke of the educated mind as one capable of entertaining a thought without accepting it. This is that practice in motion. You can witness chaos without letting it move in. You can hear the noise without letting it tune your inner world. This is not avoidance. This is sovereignty. Think about how different life feels when your attention is treated like currency instead of loose change. Every moment you spend reacting to nonsense is a moment you cannot invest in clarity, creation, or rest. The Stoics knew that the richest person is not the one with the most possessions, but the one least dependent on externals for peace. Attention is one of those externals when it is given away without care. Picture a man walking through a crowded marketplace. Vendors shout, hands wave, opinions collide. He moves steadily, eyes forward, aware of everything, owned by nothing. He does not need to announce his calm. It announces itself. This is what selective attention creates. A presence that feels grounded. A silence that carries weight. Epictetus taught that freedom begins where compulsion ends. If every comment pulls you, every provocation hooks you, every demand for reaction gets answered, you are not free. You are reactive. But when you choose where to place your attention, you reclaim authorship over your inner life. You stop living at the mercy of whoever is loudest, sharpest, or most persistent. Notice how this shifts your energy. You are no longer scattered. You are intentional. You begin to move through situations without leaving pieces of yourself behind. You stop explaining yourself to people who never intended to understand. You stop defending your peace to those who profit from disturbing it. And slowly, something changes in how others experience you. Not because you told them, but because they feel it. You respond less. You engage selectively. You do not rush to fill silence or correct every misunderstanding. Your calm becomes quiet, but undeniable. This does not mean you never speak. It means when you do, it matters. When you give attention, it nourishes something worth growing. The Stoics were never passive observers. They were active curators of their inner world. They knew that discipline begins not with action, but with choice. As the day ends, imagine closing that gate again. Not out of fear, but out of respect for what lives inside. You do not owe your presence to everyone who demands it. You do not owe your energy to every voice that calls your name. Some things can scroll past, some people can fade, some moments can pass without comment. What remains is focus. What remains is steadiness. What remains is a calm that feels earned, not forced. This is Stoic living at its clearest, quiet, deliberate, unbothered, not because nothing happens, but because you decide what gets to matter. At this stage, imagine the moment just before a storm breaks, when the air feels heavy but strangely still, and you sense that something small is about to tip everything over, not with noise, but with weight. That is how perspective works, not as a dramatic overhaul, but as a quiet shift. One thought turns slightly, one angle changes, and suddenly the storm inside you loses its grip. This is where gratitude enters, not as a decoration, not as something soft or sentimental, but as a grounded force that steadies the ground beneath your feet when everything else feels unstable. Now imagine this. Try to hold anger and gratitude in the same breath. You cannot. Anger tightens the world into a narrow tunnel where everything feels unfair, personal, sharp. Gratitude widens the frame. It does not deny the pain, but it refuses to let pain become the whole story. The Stoics understood this deeply. They never used gratitude as an escape. They used it as an anchor. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by war, betrayal, sickness, and political pressure, did not write about gratitude from a place of comfort. He wrote as a man under constant strain, reminding himself not to obsess over what was missing, but to notice what was still standing. Not because it felt good, but because it kept his mind clear enough to lead. Here is the quiet truth. Gratitude is not the opposite of suffering. It is what prevents suffering from becoming identity. When everything hurts, gratitude does not say nothing hurts. It says not everything is lost. That distinction matters. Without it, the mind spirals. With it, the mind stabilizes. This is not optimism. It is realism with depth. Think about how quickly the mind gravitates toward what is wrong. One problem expands to fill the entire horizon. One mistake rewrites your whole day. The Stoics trained themselves to interrupt that habit, not by forcing positive thoughts, but by restoring proportion. Gratitude restores proportion. It reminds you that even in a fractured moment, there is still ground beneath you, breath in your lungs, time still moving, a choice still available. Plato believed the soul grows wiser through reflection, and gratitude is reflection in motion. It pulls you out of the endless replay in your head and brings you back into the present. Not the imagined present, the real one. The one where something is still working, still holding, still supporting you, even if quietly. When you touch that awareness, your body softens, your breath deepens, the urgency fades, not because the problem vanished, but because it no longer owns the entire stage. Picture a person sitting in silence after a sharp exchange, jaw tight, chest heavy. The mind racing through comebacks and justifications. Now imagine that same person pausing and naming 3 real things that are still intact. Not impressive things, ordinary things, a roof, a working body. The fact that awareness itself is present. That pause changes the nervous rhythm. It interrupts the surge. It creates space. And in that space, response becomes possible. Socrates believed contentment was not found by adding more, but by subtracting false demands. Gratitude does exactly that. It strips away the invisible contracts you have with the world, the ones that say things should be easier, fairer, faster. It does not make those wishes disappear. It simply stops them from running the show. When those demands loosen, clarity returns. This is why gratitude is such a powerful discipline for staying calm. Anger narrows your vision. Gratitude widens it. Anger says focus on the wound. Gratitude says remember the body around it. Anger pushes you toward impulse. Gratitude brings you back to choice, not a forced choice, a grounded one. Here is something rarely said out loud. Gratitude does not weaken your edge, it sharpens it. When your mind is not consumed by resentment, you see better. You speak cleaner. You act with more precision. The Stoics were not gentle because they were soft. They were steady because they were clear. Imagine standing at a crossroads after something goes wrong. One path leads deeper into reaction, replay, and agitation. The other leads back to presence. Gratitude is not the destination. It is the turn. It does not solve everything. It simply prevents you from being consumed by one moment. And that is often enough. As you practice this, something subtle changes. You stop needing the world to cooperate for you to be okay. You stop outsourcing your calm to outcomes. Your peace becomes less fragile, less conditional. You still feel frustration. You still feel disappointment. But they pass through instead of taking residence. The Stoics did not aim to eliminate emotion. They aimed to prevent emotion from hijacking judgment. Gratitude supports that aim quietly, consistently. It does not announce itself. It works in the background, stabilizing the system. So the next time the heat rises, the jaw tightens, the urge to react flares, do not rush to fix the problem. Pause. Name what is still here. Name what has not been taken. Name what you would miss if it were gone. Not to pretend the pain is small, but to remind yourself that it is not everything. From that place, your next move will be cleaner. Your words will carry less poison. Your silence will carry more weight. Gratitude will not erase the problem, but it will loosen its grip. And sometimes that is the difference between being consumed by the moment and quietly mastering it. This is how the Stoics stayed steady, not by denying reality, but by seeing it fully, not just what hurts, but what holds. As we reach this point, something subtle has already shifted. What once felt like effort is starting to feel like instinct. The reactions that used to rise automatically now pause, even if only for a breath. And in that breath, a new question begins to form. Quieter, but deeper. If I can stay calm here, what else becomes possible? This is where the journey turns inward, away from managing moments, and toward reshaping the way you see them. Not a new set of rules, but a wider horizon. The calm you've built is no longer just protection. It becomes a lens. And when you start looking through that lens, something else happens. Calm stops feeling fragile. It starts to feel familiar, like solid ground beneath your feet after a long storm. This is where a deeper shift begins, not about reacting less, but about seeing life differently before reaction even has a chance to form. Imagine standing in a crowded room where noise used to overwhelm you, voices pulling at you from every direction, opinions colliding, expectations pressing in, and suddenly realizing the noise is still there, but it no longer enters you. Something has changed. Not outside, inside. Now imagine this question settling quietly in your mind. What if most of what drains you never truly mattered in the first place? Not in the long arc of your life, not in the person you are becoming. The Stoics returned to this idea again and again. They trained themselves to view events from above, to zoom out until the sharp edges softened and the real shape of things emerged. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself that human life is a brief visit, like a guest staying the night. When you remember that, many insults lose their weight, many frustrations shrink, not because they were fake, but because they were temporary. Here is where calm matures into something stronger than control. Perspective, the ability to see an event not only as it feels in the moment, but as it will look tomorrow, next year, or from the end of your life looking back. When you hold that wider view, urgency fades, ego quiets. You stop needing every moment to validate you. This is not detachment from life, it is intimacy with reality without being owned by it. Think of a man arguing fiercely over a small slight, his voice tight, his chest burning, convinced that this moment defines him. Now imagine that same man stepping back and asking himself a single question. Will this matter when I am older, slower, quieter, and closer to the end than the beginning? Often the answer arrives instantly. No, and in that no, something releases. The Stoics did not escape conflict, they lived in it. War, betrayal, exile, illness. What separated them was not comfort, but scale. They learned to measure events properly. Epictetus reminded his students that when something disturbs you, it is never the thing itself, but the judgment you attach to it. Change the judgment, and the disturbance weakens. This is not denial, it is refinement. Picture your mind like a lens. When it is zoomed in too close, every flaw looks massive, every inconvenience feels personal. When you zoom out, patterns appear. Context returns. You see how small moments fit into larger flows. Perspective is the act of adjusting that lens on purpose. There is a quiet freedom in realizing that most people are not thinking about you nearly as much as you imagine. Their words, their moods, their actions are usually reflections of their own battles, their own fatigue, their own confusion. When you stop assuming every interaction is about you, space opens. You breathe easier. You stop carrying weight that was never yours. Socrates warned that a life spent chasing appearances is a life easily disturbed. The Stoics took that warning seriously. They trained themselves to value character over reputation, clarity over applause, steadiness over approval. When those priorities shift, calm stops being fragile. It becomes rooted. Consider how often anger arises from shrinking the world down to one moment. One comment, one mistake, one disappointment. Perspective stretches the timeline. It reminds you of all the moments that came before and all the moments that will come after. In that wider frame, you are no longer trapped inside a single scene. This is why seasoned people often appear calmer. Not because life became easier, but because they stopped treating every challenge as final. They learned that storms pass. They learned that today's urgency often becomes tomorrow's footnote. They learned not to give permanent energy to temporary events. There is a practice hidden here, simple but demanding. When something provokes you, pause and ask yourself where this moment belongs in the story of your life. Is it a turning point or just a line? Is it a chapter or a sentence? Most of the time, it is a sentence, and sentences do not deserve the power to rewrite the whole book. Aristotle spoke of wisdom as the ability to see things in their proper measure. That measure is what keeps the soul balanced. Without it, emotions swell beyond their size. With it, emotions inform without overwhelming. Perspective also softens judgment toward others. When you remember how often you have been tired, confused, reactive, or wrong, compassion becomes easier. Not sentimental compassion, honest compassion. The kind that says, I know what it is to struggle, so I will not make this moment heavier than it needs to be. This does not mean you tolerate disrespect or abandon boundaries. It means you choose when something deserves your full attention and when it deserves to pass through without lodging inside you. Perspective gives you that discernment. As this way of seeing deepens, something subtle happens. You stop rushing to conclusions. You stop narrating everything as a threat or an insult. You begin to observe first. That observation creates distance. That distance creates choice. And choice is where calm truly lives. By the end of this shift, calm is no longer something you defend. It is something you stand on. You are less shaken not because the world changed, but because you stopped meeting every moment at its loudest point. You met it from a higher ground, and from here, the path continues, not toward numbness, but toward a steadier way of moving through whatever comes next. From here, let's step into a quieter terrain, the kind you only notice once the noise has stopped chasing you, where calm is no longer something you reach for, but something you carry. Picture a moment where nothing dramatic happens, no argument, no trigger, just an ordinary day. And yet this is where most people slowly lose their peace, not through conflict, but through drift, through neglect, through letting small habits shape the mind without resistance. Now imagine waking up and realizing that your calm does not just break in moments of pressure, but erodes in moments of carelessness. A rushed morning, a scattered mind, a day lived on autopilot. The Stoics paid close attention to this. They understood that a steady life is not built only in crisis, but in repetition. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that the quality of his thoughts determined the quality of his life. Not occasionally, daily. Because what you practice quietly becomes who you are, loudly. Here is the deeper lesson. Calm is not just how you respond when something goes wrong. Calm is how you live when nothing is happening. It is forged in routine, in what you allow your mind to dwell on when it is not under attack. Most people wait for a trigger to test their discipline. The Stoics trained before the test arrived. Think about how often the mind wanders into resentment, comparison, replay. No one provoked it. It just drifted there. This is where many lose ground without realizing it. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, and this suffering often sneaks in during idle moments. When the mind is unguarded, it feeds itself whatever is familiar, and if agitation has been familiar, it will return. This is why the Stoics emphasized intentional living, not rigid control, but conscious direction. Choosing what deserves space in your inner world. Choosing what you rehearse. Because every thought repeated becomes a groove. Every groove becomes a habit. And habits, over time, become character. Imagine two people facing the same inconvenience. One spirals, one shrugs. The difference is not strength in that moment. It is training before that moment. One has practiced presence. The other has practiced reaction. Calm is cumulative. There is a story of Epictetus, once enslaved, later teaching students who were free but restless. He reminded them that freedom is not the absence of chains, but the absence of inner compulsion. If your mood rises and falls with every thought, every message, every comparison, you are not free. Calm is not comfort. Calm is sovereignty. Now imagine applying this not only when you are challenged, but when you are comfortable. How you start your morning, how you close your day. Whether you let your mind scatter across everything you cannot control or anchor it in what is yours to shape. This is where calm becomes a lifestyle, not a tactic. Aristotle believed excellence was not an act, but a habit. The Stoics echoed this in their own way. They did not seek one perfect response. They sought consistency, a steady orientation toward reason, toward clarity, toward self-command. Consider how often people sabotage their own peace by overexposure. Too much noise, too many opinions, too much comparison. The Stoics were selective, not isolated but deliberate. They understood that attention is finite. Whatever you give it to grows. If you feed agitation, agitation multiplies. If you feed steadiness, steadiness strengthens. Picture a man who scrolls endlessly through things that irritate him, then wonders why he feels tense. Contrast that with someone who limits what enters his mind, not out of fear, but out of respect for his inner state. One lives reactive, the other lives composed. Same world, different discipline. This is not withdrawal from life. It is refinement of engagement, choosing depth over noise, substance over stimulation. Marcus Aurelius wrote that tranquility comes when you stop chasing after what you think you need and start honoring what you already have. That includes your attention. There is a quiet power in setting rhythms. Morning reflection, evening review, asking yourself what you allowed into your mind today and what you denied entry, not to judge, to observe. Observation creates awareness. Awareness creates choice. When you begin to live this way, calm stops being something you lose and regain. It becomes your baseline. You still feel emotion, you still feel tension, but it no longer knocks you off course so easily. You return faster, you recover quicker, you stay rooted. This is where calm matures into resilience. Not the dramatic kind that survives disaster, but the steady kind that prevents disaster from forming inside you. The kind that keeps small things small. Socrates believed that an unexamined life was not worth living. The Stoics added that an undisciplined inner life is not peaceful. Examination without practice is insight without power. Practice without awareness is habit without direction. Calm requires both. As this way of living settles in, you may notice something surprising. You stop craving intensity. You stop needing chaos to feel alive. Presence becomes enough. Stillness becomes rich, and from that stillness, action becomes precise. This is the quiet turning point, where calm is no longer just about not reacting, but about how you choose to live when no one is watching, where discipline feels less like restriction and more like freedom, where your inner world becomes a place you trust. And once that happens, the next step is not about adding more. It is about carrying this steadiness into how you move, decide, and act when the world inevitably asks more of you again. Advancing to a deeper layer, imagine the moment when calm no longer feels like something you protect from the world, but something that quietly reshapes how you move through it. Picture walking into a situation that once would have demanded a reaction, a meeting, a confrontation, a difficult decision, and noticing that your first impulse is no longer urgency, but clarity, not hesitation. Clarity. This is where calm turns into direction. Now imagine standing at a crossroads, not dramatic, not cinematic, just ordinary. Two paths. One is familiar. React quickly, decide fast, say yes out of pressure, say no out of fear. The other path is slower, quieter. You pause, you ask a better question, not what feels good now, but what aligns with who I am becoming. This is where the Stoics placed enormous weight. Calm to them was not the absence of emotion, it was the presence of judgment. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. What he was pointing to was subtle but powerful. Every decision you make while unsettled carries residue. Every choice made in agitation leaves a trace. Over time, those traces shape your life. Calm clears the lens through which decisions are made. Without it, even intelligent choices become distorted. Think about how many regrets are not born from bad intentions, but from rushed moments. A job accepted too quickly, a relationship continued too long, a boundary not set because it felt uncomfortable. Calm is what allows you to see the long arc instead of the immediate relief. It slows the inner clock just enough for wisdom to catch up. Here is the shift most people miss. Calm is not passive, it is active restraint. It is the strength to delay, to wait, to let things reveal themselves before you commit your energy. Seneca warned that no wind is favorable to the sailor who does not know his destination. Calm helps you remember where you're going when the winds get loud. Picture a person who says yes to everything, helpful, available, always responsive, and slowly, invisibly, exhausted. Contrast that with someone who pauses before agreeing, who listens to their own capacity, who understands that every yes is also a no to something else. Calm creates boundaries without hostility. It allows firmness without aggression. Aristotle believed that virtue lived in the middle, between excess and deficiency. Calm is what helps you find that middle. Without calm, you overcommit or withdraw completely. With calm, you choose proportion. You give what is right, not what is demanded. Imagine being criticized unfairly. The reactive path is immediate defense. The calm path is assessment. Is this feedback useful? Is it noise? Does it deserve response or silence? Epictetus taught that you should not explain yourself to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. Calm helps you recognize the difference between engagement and entanglement. This is where discernment is born. Not every opportunity deserves your effort. Not every conflict deserves your voice. Not every emotion deserves to be acted upon. Calm is the gatekeeper. It decides what enters and what passes by. There is a quiet confidence that grows here. You stop explaining yourself excessively. You stop rushing to justify your choices. You trust your inner compass because you have tested it in stillness. That trust changes how others experience you. People feel it. You speak less. Your words carry more weight. Think of a leader who panics under pressure versus one who remains measured. Same stakes, same risks, completely different outcomes. The calm leader does not rush to appear decisive. They are decisive because they are calm. Their decisions land cleaner. Their teams feel steadier. Calm radiates outward. Socrates believed wisdom was knowing how to live well, not just how to think well. Calm bridges that gap. It turns insight into action. Without calm, wisdom stays theoretical. With calm, it becomes practical. Consider how often people confuse speed with effectiveness. They respond quickly and call it strength. But speed without clarity is just momentum. Calm introduces friction in the right places. It slows you down just enough to prevent self-sabotage. This does not mean you become slow or indecisive. It means you become precise. When you act fully. When you speak intentionally. When you commit without resentment. Calm removes the noise that makes decisions heavy. There is a moment that comes when you realize you are no longer reacting to life, but cooperating with it. You see patterns earlier. You anticipate consequences better. You choose environments that support your steadiness instead of constantly testing it. This is not avoidance, it is strategy. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the best way to live was to align action with nature. Not chaos, not impulse. Nature moves steadily. Seasons do not rush. Rivers do not panic. Calm aligns you with that rhythm. As this alignment deepens, you notice fewer dramatic highs and lows. Not because life became dull, but because you stopped manufacturing intensity. You find satisfaction in consistency, strength in reliability, peace in coherence. This is where calm transforms into leadership. Even if you never hold a title, you become someone others feel safe around. Not because you solve everything, but because you do not add to the chaos. Your presence steadies rooms. Your decisions create clarity instead of confusion. And as this steadiness settles in, a new question naturally emerges. If calm can shape how you decide, how you act, how you lead, what happens when you carry it into moments of pressure that truly test your character? That is where the path continues. Entering the next stretch, imagine a moment when pressure finally arrives without warning. Not the small daily frictions, but the kind that tests who you really are. A public mistake, a sudden loss, a confrontation you cannot avoid. The room feels tighter, eyes are on you. This is where calm either proves real or reveals itself as rehearsal. And this is where the Stoics leaned in, not away. Now imagine standing in that moment, heart steady, thoughts slow enough to line up instead of collide. Not because you feel nothing, but because you are not ruled by what you feel. Most people break here, not from weakness, but from surprise. They trained for comfort, not pressure. The Stoics trained the opposite way. They expected resistance. They prepared for it mentally long before it arrived. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the impediment to action advances action, that what stands in the way becomes the way. This was not optimism. It was realism sharpened into strength. Pressure to the Stoic was not an interruption. It was a test of alignment, a moment asking a single question. Will you abandon your principles now, or will you carry them through the fire? Think about how often pressure makes people betray themselves. They lie to avoid discomfort. They lash out to regain control. They fold to preserve approval. Pressure exposes values the way heat exposes metal. Calm is what keeps the structure intact. Picture a leader blamed for something that was not fully their fault. The reactive response is defense, explanation, justification. The Stoic response is ownership of what is theirs and release of what is not. No panic, no theater, just clarity. Epictetus taught that it is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Under pressure, judgments accelerate. Calm slows them down. Here is the deeper shift. Calm under pressure is not about staying pleasant. It is about staying honest. Honest with yourself about what matters. Honest about what you can control. Honest about what must be endured. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Pressure inflates imagination. Calm collapses it back to size. Think of an athlete in the final seconds of a game. The crowd is loud. The stakes are high. The body wants to rush. The mind wants to escape. The trained athlete breathes, focuses on fundamentals. Pressure narrows attention to what matters. Calm makes that narrowing deliberate instead of desperate. Life works the same way. Under pressure, everything unnecessary must fall away. Opinions, ego, fear of how it looks. What remains is choice. Act with virtue or act with impulse. Aristotle believed excellence was not an act, but a habit. Pressure reveals which habits you have built. Consider someone receiving harsh criticism in public. The instinct is to defend reputation. Calm redirects attention inward. Is this criticism accurate? Is it useful? Does it require response now or later? Sometimes silence is strength. Sometimes a measured reply is stronger than any rebuttal. Calm gives you access to those options. There is also grief here. Pressure often brings loss of control, loss of status, loss of certainty. The Stoics did not deny grief. They refused to let it define them. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that all things are temporary, including pain. Calm allows you to feel sorrow without drowning in it. This is where many misunderstand Stoicism. They think it demands emotional numbness. It does not. It demands emotional literacy, knowing what you feel, naming it, choosing not to obey it blindly. Calm is not suppression, it is command. Picture a parent facing a child's failure. The urge is to rescue, to fix, to absorb the pain for them. Calm recognizes limits. You guide without controlling. You support without collapsing. You allow struggle to teach what comfort cannot. Pressure also tests patience with others. People behave poorly when stressed. They blame, they deflect, they lash out. Calm becomes a form of mercy, not because you excuse behavior, but because you refuse to multiply harm. Seneca wrote that anger is a temporary madness under pressure. Calm is sanity. There is a quiet dignity in someone who does not unravel when things go wrong. People feel it, trust it, gravitate toward it. Not because that person is unbreakable, but because they are predictable in the best way. Their values do not evaporate under heat. This dignity is built long before the test, in small choices, in private discipline, in moments no one sees. Calm practice daily becomes resilience under fire. There are no shortcuts here. The mind you train in peace is the mind that shows up in crisis. Socrates believed the good life required alignment between thought and action. Pressure exposes misalignment instantly. Calm closes that gap. It allows action to remain consistent even when circumstances are not. As this steadiness deepens, something else emerges, a strange freedom. You stop fearing pressure because you trust yourself within it. You know you may feel pain, but you will not abandon your principles. You may stumble, but you will not panic. That trust changes how you approach risk. You become bolder, not reckless. Pressure no longer feels like an enemy. It becomes a proving ground, a place where your practice speaks for itself, where calm stops being a tool and becomes an identity. And as you stand there steady in the middle of what once would have shaken you, another realization begins to form. If calm can hold under pressure, if it can guide action when stakes are high, then it is no longer just about surviving moments. It becomes about shaping a life that no longer depends on favorable conditions to feel whole. At this stage, imagine waking up one morning and realizing that calm is no longer something you practice only when life is gentle. It is there when the day begins wrong. It stays when plans fall apart. It holds even when nothing around you feels stable. This is where the path quietly completes its circle, not with noise, not with triumph, but with a deep sense of inner ownership. Calm is no longer a reaction, it is a position. Now imagine looking back at the person you used to be, the version that needed circumstances to cooperate in order to feel okay. The version that waited for respect, waited for fairness, waited for people to behave differently. That version is not weak, it was simply unfinished. What has changed is not the world, but your relationship to it. The Stoics aimed for this state deliberately. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the tranquility of the soul comes from ordering the mind, not arranging events. This was never about controlling life. It was about no longer being dragged by it. Calm becomes permanent the moment you stop bargaining with chaos and start standing your ground. Think about how exhausting it is to live in constant reaction. Every message, every tone shift, every unexpected delay feels like a personal test. Calm breaks that contract. It says, life may move as it will, but my inner stance remains mine. That is sovereignty. Quiet, unapologetic, unshakable. Epictetus taught that freedom is not the absence of obstacles, but the ability to meet them without losing oneself. When calm settles deeply, obstacles lose their emotional leverage. They still exist, they still require action, but they no longer demand your identity in exchange for engagement. Picture someone who has been criticized unfairly. The old response would replay the moment endlessly, searching for vindication. The steadier response acknowledges the injustice, acts where necessary, and then releases the rest. Not because it does not matter, but because your peace matters more. Calm becomes a filter that keeps only what is useful. This is where many people misunderstand detachment. They think it means withdrawal. It does not. It means engagement without entanglement. You still care. You still act. You simply refuse to be owned by outcomes beyond your control. Seneca warned that a mind enslaved to externals can never rest. Calm is emancipation. Consider grief. Loss will come. It always does. Calm does not erase sorrow. It gives sorrow space without letting it collapse the whole structure of your life. You mourn fully, but you do not lose yourself entirely. You feel pain without turning it into despair. This is not emotional coldness. It is emotional integrity. Aristotle believed the highest human function was rational activity in accordance with virtue. Calm allows that function to continue even when emotions surge. It does not silence feeling. It prevents feeling from hijacking action. As this steadiness matures, something unexpected happens. You stop needing to prove anything. Not strength, not intelligence, not resilience. Calm removes the hunger for validation. You no longer need others to recognize your composure. You feel it internally. That is enough. This inner sufficiency changes how you move through relationships. You listen more. You interrupt less. You respond without urgency. People feel safe around you, not because you solve their problems, but because you are not reactive to their chaos. Calm becomes a form of leadership without announcement. Think of someone who walks into a tense room and lowers the temperature simply by being present. No speeches, no authority, just steadiness. That steadiness is contagious. The Stoics understood this. Virtue expressed quietly shapes the environment more effectively than force. There is also a humility here. Calm teaches you that you do not need to have an opinion about everything. You do not need to engage every provocation. Silence becomes an option, not a weakness. Epictetus reminded his students that we always have the power to remain silent. Calm helps you remember that power exists. As life continues, challenges do not stop. Aging, illness, uncertainty. The Stoics never promised immunity. They promised preparation. Calm is that preparation embodied. It is the difference between meeting difficulty as a victim or as a participant. You begin to notice that even success feels different. Praise does not inflate you. Achievement does not define you. Calm keeps you grounded when success tries to intoxicate you and failure tries to define you. This roundedness brings clarity. You choose goals more carefully. You invest energy where it matters. You stop chasing distractions disguised as opportunities. Calm becomes a compass, quietly steering you away from what costs too much and toward what aligns with your values. At some point you realize you are no longer asking how to stay calm, you are asking how to live well from this place. That is the final shift. Calm is no longer the destination, it is the foundation. Socrates believed that the good life was examined, deliberate, and aligned with reason. Calm allows examination without self-attack, deliberation without fear, alignment without force. It gives you the mental space to choose who you are becoming, and so the journey resolves not with an ending, but with a way of being. Calm that does not depend on silence, strength that does not require dominance, peace that does not wait for permission. Life will continue to test you, that is certain. But now those tests no longer ask whether you will break. They ask something quieter and more profound. Will you remain yourself when nothing and no one is holding you together anymore? And this time, you already know the answer. Your calm was never meant to depend on a quiet world. It grows each time you choose awareness over impulse. If this path resonates, consider subscribing and walking it with intention. Share one thought below. Stay steady, stay present, and continue with the next